In this video, we're going to take a look at using a Ruffler Foot attachment on your sewing machine. Now this presser foot is quite different than many of the ones that just attach and it's a simple foot. This is a whole unit similar to a walking foot that has a couple parts that you'll want to pay special attention to. First is this hook right here, which needs to latch around this adjustment screw right here on the front part of the foot. So when you slide it on, this will hook around that screw, and then this section in the back is what fits onto the presser foot attachment. Now the Ruffler Foot is set to stitch several different types of stitches. So there's a guide on the front section right here with a 1, a 6, a 12, and a 0. And this is setting the stitches between the pleats. So it uses a pleating function to create pleats or gathers. If it's set at a 1, it will stitch 1 stitch and push the pleat. If it's set at a 6, it'll push the pleat every 6 stitches and then every 12 stitches. And if you push it to 0, you're simply sewing a straight seam with no pleating function. So you can use that if you're doing sections, but it's all one piece of fabric. And then the one other adjustment area is the screw on the front section. So this is straight out of the package, and we have it pushed all the way in to create the deepest pleats possible. If you loosen this screw and pull it backwards so that the screw is extending out, you will have less of the pushing of the pleat underneath. So it creates more of a gather than it does a deep pleat. Now your Ruffler Foot is going to come with a screwdriver that's designed to fit that screw specifically, and mine also came with a replacement spring, which is right here on the back side of this foot. Now to install this foot, we've removed the standard presser foot. I'm going to slip this in, positioning this hook right here over this screw, and then I will slide it towards the back to secure the back of the foot up in there, and I'll push that lever down. So I have this front part that will move based on how the needle is moving. So that's going to pull this front part up and down because it's on this screw right here. For the first example, I'm going to show you just basic gathering with the 1 stitch setting. So this foot has a slot right in it here where you're going to slip the fabric in between those 2 pieces and then all the way through to the back. Now you're going to want to make sure that you have a little bit of fabric cut into your length to extend past the back of the foot. So we have about 1 inch here extending past the back just to be sure that it's caught by the feed dogs. Then you lower this, and as we stitch, you'll see it's going to pull a pleat into every stitch, and we have this screw in as tight as possible, so this will be the deepest pleat every stitch. And there you can see that first test. So these pleats are folded pretty large back on top of themselves. So they're more like pleats than they are gathers, but they're very tiny. So this can replace gathering on a garment where you have maybe a skirt portion attaching to a waistband. Now to adjust how much pleating is happening, for this part right here, we will pull this screw out and loosen it, and then the depth of each pleat will be narrower. Now I'm going to run a piece of fabric through here again, with the only setting that's been changed is the depth of the pleat by adjusting this screw. And there you can see this is the second test. So here we have the pleat depth is a little bit narrower than that first example. So there you can see both of those side by side. So you can see there's quite a bit of difference in the 2 pleat depths. So this one is more like a traditional ruffle than it is a set of pleats. Now if you wanted this to be very tight pleating, you could take this over to the iron and press these pleats all the way down, and that would give you a very tight, tiny pleated look, different than the look it has right now, which is more of a gathered ruffle. Now in this example, I have the same size piece of fabric, and I'm going to adjust this stitch pleat length here from the 1 to the 6, so you can see how we will create more distinct pleats than a gather. I'm also going to go in and tighten this screw so that it is creating pleats with the most depth. And then we will begin stitching to create our pleats. And there you can see we have a nice even row of pleats. So every 6 stitches, it is folding the fabric under and pushing a pleat. And then if we go ahead and take that over to the ironing board and press it, we have a very nice, consistent pressed pleat look. So something like this would work great on the pleated skirt or some sort of skirt ruffle. Now for this final example, I'm going to show you how to take one piece which is intended to be flat and at the same time sew your ruffled or pleated piece to this. Using this foot, it will sew it all at one time. So we have pieces cut for a waistband, which this piece is 13 inches long, and then I have another piece cut for the ruffle portion or the pleated skirt portion, and this is cut twice as long. So based on my calculations, I should have enough fabric to have a 2-to-1 ratio of the pleating to the waistband. So this waistband fabric is going right side up and it's going all the way under the entire presser foot, and I'm lining that up with the back edge of the back of the foot. Now the ruffle piece is going to be wrong side up, so the pieces are right sides together. I'm going to slide this in between the guide right here, so it's in between the top layer and the bottom layer, just as I was for all the other gathering, but this is wrong side up. So this is still extending a little bit past the back of the foot, but this piece is going underneath, and I'm going to line these up on the right side of the fabric. And I'm going to go ahead and lower the presser foot and stitch these two pieces together. And I'm just holding this waistband piece lightly with my fingers just so it's not getting caught up under the bottom, but letting the top fabric be pleated on the top. So here I have that pleated section and my flat waistband section. Now my math was a little bit off because I do have quite a bit of extra fabric here, but it still creates a pleated look on the front of the skirt. Now that we've pressed the pleats flat, you can see we have our waistband portion, which is cut from the pattern, and then the skirt portion, which has been pleated. So again, I cut this twice the length of the waistband and then did a pleating function on the ruffler foot that was 6 stitches apart, and it created enough pleats. So I do have a pleated skirt look. It's just a little bit different than the actual pattern because the depth of each pleat is different than if you were to hand pleat it. But if we trimmed this off and then just finished the skirt and sew the center back seam and do the casing and the hem, you can see that this makes a very cute pleated skirt. So the only difference from the original pattern is just the actual pleat depth, but the pleat spacing along this lower portion is the same design as the pattern. So this works really quickly and efficiently if you want to create a lot of skirts that are either pleated or just a simple gathered ruffle for this bottom portion. You can use the existing yoke or waistband from patterns that we have available, and then simply create your ruffle with a 2 or 3 to 1 ratio for either the pleated look or the individual single stitch tiny pleats to create more of a ruffled gathered look. So I really encourage you to get a ruffler foot and experiment with all the possibilities that are available to you for your different sewing projects.